Hello, my name is Wei Li. Some of you do not know me much just yet. So here's a little intro. I am a studio artist and I study intensively art history. To be specific, comparative art history between Chinese visual arts and the Western visual arts, namely the European visual art history extended into American contemporary art history. This is the scope that I defined for myself and by myself. As we all know, not too many art historians actually practice studio arts, and not that many studio artists actually study too much into art history as they prefer concentrate on their own practice. The reason I, as a studio artist, spend so much time on art history was primarily inspired by a project as culture exchange program jointly between German federal government and Chinese central government back in 2011 when Beijing TV of China took on this project and came to me for a script writer and a presenter on camera for their documentary series dedicated to the subject of the European arts of enlightened period. When from there, I actually took a dive deeper into Chinese art history. As we all know, the Chinese culture basically formed on the premise of three pillars: the Confucianism, and the Zennism came from the Buddhism, and the Taoism. Now, there are many different schools of visual arts in Chinese history, just like in other countries or other regions. There's something unique from the Chinese visual art history, which is basically a particular school of Chinese traditional arts came out and stand out even to the day, which is referred to today as the Chinese elite art. It was referred to the cultural elites back then in the traditional Chinese society. There was a group of cultural elites who took almost half of their life, some smarter, got shorter span of time and prevailed. Others may not prevail until their mid age or middle life. Now, with this specific group of Chinese cultural elites, they had to pass through the three levels of examinations to gain the credentials to become court appointed government officers. The first or the elementary level, most passed in their teenagehood. And then the medium level or secondary level, some passed way later. And the ultimate one became the one to decide if you could become a very important government officer. All this part was driven and guided by Confucianism. But once you or those fellas broke into the system of the government bureaucracy system, purely on the merit, and nobody cared what your parents or grandparents award, as long as you pass through fairly the examinations, you became eligible to be appointed by court for your political assignment with particular positions. And once you become a politician and you start to live your political life, some in the capital city in court, others took their provincial positions, sooner or later you'll be hit by certain political events. Now, from that point on, the Taoism came in because they had to stop and smell the roses. And a lot of them were actually poets, calligraphy artists, and all of them were very good in literature. They were well trained for and tested to be qualified to come into the bureaucracy system. So in the ancient Chinese history, many politicians were also poets and artists. Some of them were really good in the visual arts. Others were also good or just good at calligraphy arts. This was the school of cultural elite arts. It is very different system, or it was a very different system from the rest of the world, because this was the kind of arts communicate only within the same circle for the people with the same training background, whether or not they made it to the bureaucracy system. On this premise, the arts of this school was very conceptual. The contexts were delivered in subtle way, intentionally preserved with the room for interpretations, and if you were one of them back in the same circle, then you would get it. Remember, these politicians, they went up and then they came down, and lots of times they became philosophical. And you could see that in their paintings. Now, that was the cultural elite school of Chinese paintings. I personally do not believe the same school of arts existed in any other countries in histories. This is basically because not in any other countries within the same period of time, tracing back to about 1,000 years, there was such a social group existed. Now, this is about the cultural elite school of Chinese traditional arts.